الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We'll continue inshallah ta'ala with Akhsar Al-Mokhtasarat. And last time we finished the chapter that talked about As-Salam, Bay'u Salam. And before we continue inshallah, it's important that we make sure that no word is skipped without understanding it, especially with these mutun. With these mutun of al-ilm, it's very precise. Even the dhama'ir is very precise. What the ha refers to and what does it mean. As mentioned before, that ulama, they would intentionally do that so that people put effort in learning these mutun, and the matn stays. And you would find many different shuruh, many different explanations to it. So even what's even the important, or what ought to be done, is that we even memorize it, one word after the other. But this is inshallah ta'ala a level that will come later inshallah ta'ala. And also the other important point, that when we're learning as a first level these masail and these matters, we not necessarily going to be able to figure out every contemporary issues in matters of muamalat transactions, because it's very complicated. And sometimes a situation or a transaction might look similar to what we're studying, but it's not. So that's why we should not rush into, thinking that, since what is mentioned in the dars, therefore this aqd or this contract is not permissible. We're not into this level. We still continue to be in the place where you ask the people of knowledge with every transaction, with every aqd, with every situation, and don't assume that it's haram or assume that it's halal, because one or the other, it's not necessarily one is better than the other. So tahrim al-halal, if someone forbade something haram, something halal, someone forbade something halal, that's not something that is of a lesser crime than to make the tahleel of al-haram, to make permissible what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade. So they're both not permissible. Yes, one can be worse than the other, it depends on the situation, and it's different than al-wara', to stay away from things, but especially in the subject of transactions, because the rule is that everything is halal unless proven otherwise. So, and there's so many different transactions that are very complex. So that's why it's very important to refer it to the people of knowledge instead of rushing to talk about the rulings of it. And that's why as-salam, when we talked about it, which is when you're selling something that is mawsuf fi dhimma, something that is described, not something ayni, not something physical, and it's something that will be deferred. Many different things can come into that meaning, so we have to be careful. But with the conditions that we learned, the 7 conditions for bay'u salam is to be observed. One last thing is when it comes to show that it's not everything is the same like it. Like we talked about aqdul istisna', which is known from the past, but it's something that has been very common, where people would make a contract of building something or manufacturing something, or even when you pay something for a company or an individual to buy something, a big quantity. For example, you pay a down payment and then the rest of the commodity comes later. All of these things, it's not necessarily the way of bay'u salam. Some things can be permissible as far as delaying some of the payments versus something that is not permissible. So this is different than what we were talking about specifically with as-salam. So hopefully this is clear, inshallah. Should we continue? Everybody has. Then he says fasl, and this is with the ahkam of Al-Qard. Now we're going to talk about Al-Qard. Al-Qard is loans, right? But it's not quite as what people might think is a loan, because it's a very specific transaction here, but it refers to taking a loan, someone borrowing something from someone And when we see the definition of it, inshallah ta'ala, it becomes clear, inshallah. So the first mas'ala in it, he says, وَكُلُّ مَا صَحَّ بَيْعُهُ صَحَّ قَرْضُهُ إِلَّا بَنِي آدَمَ. Everything that is صَحَّ بَيْعُهُ. بَيْعُهُ, that means it's to be sold. صَحَّ, that means it's valid, it's good to be sold, it's permissible to sell. صَحَّ قَرْضُهُ, it's permissible to lend, to give it as a loan. إِلَّا بَنِي آدَمَ, except the son of Adam, except the human beings. You cannot give a human being as a loan to someone else. First of all, we need to understand what is really Al-Qard. So Al-Qard, which is mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, linguistically comes from something that is being something that is being cut. And Al-Qard is basically giving something of a value to someone else, of course, to benefit from it. And this is where you need to pay attention to the next statement. And when he returns al-badal. He returns what's the like of it, not necessarily the exact same thing. And we'll see that in the rulings. Meaning, if you give someone $100 as a loan, when he returns it, does he return the exact $100 bill that you give him? No. So he returns what? $100. It can be 20s, it can be 100. Even if it's $100 bill, it doesn't have to be the same one. Otherwise, what's the point of it? So you're always returning something the like of it that has details in it. So you give someone, food, for example, right? And that's why in the madhab here and others, makil wa mawzoon, something that is measured by volume or weight. Someone, you give him as a loan 5 kilograms of rice as a loan, not a gift. You did not sell it to him, you just given it as a loan. He returns it back as what? As 5 kilograms of rice. Doesn't have to be the same exact rice that you gave him, otherwise what's the point of it? So he would return the like of what you gave him. If he doesn't have it or the season is gone, as it's going to be mentioned also, inshallah ta'ala, then to give the value of it. Right? So you give someone, you lend someone fruits of the season. And then he returns it after 6 months and this fruit is not present in the market. So what should he do? He can give you the value of it, the value of whatever you gave him as a loan. So when the statement starts with saying وَكُلُّ مَا صَحَّ بَيْعُهُ صَحَّ قَرْضُهُ, anything that is valid to be given as anything that is valid to sell is valid to give it as a loan. So you can sell fruits and vegetables and so on, sure, then you can give that as a loan. Can you sell alcohol? Is it permissible to sell alcohol? No. So you cannot give someone alcohol as a loan. And that's a very obvious one. Haram is haram to give someone something haram as a loan. But it doesn't have to be something haram. A person has money that does not belong to him. He has amana. He has, people donated money for the masjid, cash money, and he, when he was walking out of the masjid, someone gave him some money, says, this is donation for the masjid. Can you please, take it from me? So he take it, right? And so that he can bring it later. And someone asked for money to give him as a loan. Can he give him from this money? Not that he would give it from the money of the masjid. To himself is, I'll give him from this money, and then at Maghrib, I'll give from something, another money with me. He gave 100, I will give the 100. Doesn't have to be the exact same bill, right? No, it's not permissible. Why? Because it's not permissible for him. This does not belong to him. The same thing when someone is in charge of as I mentioned these examples, the wealth of an orphan. It is not permissible for him to deal with the wealth of the orphan except with very restricted manner. So the same thing, he cannot give from the wealth of an orphan as a loan. You cannot give from the money of the masjid as a loan to someone unless the donors they agree to this from the very beginning, that you take money from them, and by the way, whoever is in need, will just give them loans. It is not permissible unless this is something that is known, and things like this. So that's why كل ما صح بيعه صح قرضه. Something that is permissible to sell, then it's permissible to give it as a loan. إلا بني آدم, except the human beings, which is a very obvious thing. Even when there were slaves and things like this, is not permissible, except the human beings, because of the how many haram things can come as a result of that. And plus, since just not the haram issues only, but think of the qard. What is the meaning of the qard? The qard, that you give something of a value in return of something like of it. So if imagine that a human being is given as a loan to someone, that means you don't have to return the same human being. You can return someone else. So that's why it doesn't work with human beings. Because al-qard is not to return the exact same thing, is to return the badal of it. Another very important point. So this is something that we need to have to take a note of, to make sure that this is clear of the definition of. The second important point also, before we continue, that this is aqd from the uqud of al-irfaq. That's why when some of the ulama, they make the definition of al-qard, they say that al-qard is دفع مال على سبيل الإرفاق. Al-irfaq from al-rifq, from gentleness. It's a contract of goodness. It's not a contract of muawada. It's not a contract of making money. So not all the contracts in the transactions or the kitab al-muamalat is based on making money. So this is a very clear principle, of course, that avoids all kinds of issues with the riba and things like this. Why people don't understand that? Because al-qard in al-Islam is not a profitable contract. It's a good deed. There is ayat of the Quran that talks about it, a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, even to the extent of which it's a mas'ala. Ulama, they discuss this. Which is more rewardable? To give someone a loan or to give someone a charity? To give him charity or a loan? What would you say? Charity, right? Most of the ulama, they say charity. But some say loan. Some say that. There's a hadith, but it's weak, that talks about this. But the part of what's mentioned in the hadith where they use it as a reason why is when someone asks for a loan, he is really in need, right? Because he knows that he's going to return it. So unless a person is having some issues, some people that are professional taking loans for no reason. But when someone is given charity, sometimes people might ask for charity when they don't need it, versus someone asking for a loan, he really needs it, right? But again, the majority, they say that giving charity, of course, is more rewardable because of the hadith in Sunan al-Majah and others, that when you give charity twice, it's the reward of when you give loan twice, it's the reward of one in charity. So the reward of charity is double. If you give charity $100, that's the reward of charity. If you give if you give 200 in loan to someone, as if you give $100 in charity. So it's a good deed, and have, because you're expecting a return, right? So, and if you forgive after you give a loan after some time, you get the reward of charity, but you get half of what you give someone as a loan already given as a reward of charity. So that's why it's called aqdu irfaq. It's not a mean for people to make money. And they talk about what's recommended. It's not recommended for someone to take a loan. Person should make sure that he does not be at ease with this. And it's recommended for the one that gives loan, definitely. And it's permissible to take loan. And it's not disliked if a person asks for it, but it's a burden. And the Prophet ﷺ used to ask when someone janazah comes, whether he has dayn or not. And if he does, then he would say, Sallu ala akhikum, you pray janazah on him. So there's implications to it, but it's permissible. It's not something that is haram, with the etiquettes of it. So going back here, وَكُلُّ مَا صَحَّ بَيْعُهُ صَحَّ قَرْضُهُ إِلَّا بَنِي آدَمَ. Then the next one, وَيَجِبُ رَدُّ مِثْلٍ. Oh, here, no, actually, وَيَجِبُ رَدُّ مِثْلِ فُلُوس وَمَكِيلٍ وَمَوْزُونٍ. So here, وَيَجِب, that means it's mandatory. Rad is to return. to return, because the qard is someone gives someone something of a value and he's going to return it or return the like of it. Before we continue also, if you give someone something and he returns the exact same thing, that's not called qard. Okay? If you give someone a car, he borrows your car. They call it, he borrows your car, right? To use it for a few days and then he returns it back. It's not called qard, right? It's called ariya and has its ruling. Ariya is different. Ariya is also like you go borrow a book from the library. You know, you're borrowing the book, yes, but in Arabic it's called ista'artu kitaban. Ista'artu al-kitab, because you're supposed to, this is how precise the language is, because you're supposed to retain the exact same book. If it's qard, if a person is, clever with laws and the law or the words of fiqh, and the library person is tells him, I'm going to give you this book as a qard. Sure, he takes the book, and there's no it's a very valuable book, so he returns it with something else or the price of it. No, it's not a qard, it's ariya. So the words even is very important. The same thing when people deal with one another. He borrowed, if someone borrowed your car, that means he doesn't have to return it as the same car. He can return it the price of it or the like of it, the same model in the same year and the same color and the same mileage, all of these things, but it doesn't have to be the same one if it's called qard, as far as the legal words of it, right? So that's why Al-Qard here is that you don't have to return the same one, you return something the like of it. But here وَيَجِبُ رَدُّ مِثْلِ فلوس. يجب, that means it's mandatory. Rad is the returning of. مثلي, the like of. فلوس, the word فلوس, and ومكيل وموزون. And مكيل and موزون. مكيل وموزون, we took it many times before. What's مكيل and موزون? No, something measured with volume or weight. And fulus is, this word is used nowadays for what? For cash money. But the word fulus actually, and it's not like fils also has the currency in some countries, they call it fils. But al-fulus in the fiqh books refers to the coins or the metal coins of, which is basically money, but they used to, in certain times, a country, for example, the sultan or the ruler, he would have in his constituency, whatever there is, they call it, he has his own fulus, his own money, where people deal with. It has no value except what he makes it as a value, where people can exchange things. And all of a sudden, he can make a decision, this fulus is cancelled, as they do in some countries. This currency, we stop dealing with it. So if someone gives someone qard with fulus, right, and then all of a sudden the ruler canceled this fulus, what's the value of it? Becomes zero, because becomes nothing. So in this case, you have to return the like of it, right? So it was worth that much in gold and silver and other currency, whatever there is. Then you return. That's why وَيَجِبُ رَدُّ مِثْلِ, the like of fulus. If it's not yet wasted, then you return exactly the same, the like of it. وَمَكِينٌ وَمَوْزُونٌ. So if we take, for example, the money situations, that you give 10, you return 10. It is not permissible to return 11 unless it's going to be mentioned at the end, inshallah. And it's the next statement. What happens if it's not there anymore? وَمَكِيلٌ وَمَوْزُونٌ. Something with weight or something measured with volume, you return the same as you give as a qard. He says, so it's clear, وَيَجِبُ رَدُّ مِثْلِ فُلُوسٍ وَمَكِيلٍ وَمَوْزُونٍ. The exact same one as it's been given. Then the next one, وَيَجِبُ فَإِنْ فُقِدَ فقيمته يوم فقده وقيمة غيرها يوم قبضه. Okay, فإن فقد, if it's lost. What's فإن فقد? What does it refer to? Refers to what's mentioned just right before that, which is الفلوس والمكيل والموزون, which is المثل. the subject of al-mithl, فإن فقد المثلي, right? The like, that you have to return the like of it. فقيمته, then you return the value of it, of how or what is it, what's its worth. So therefore, in fiqh and matters of trade or things that you buy and sell or give a loan and things like this, there is al-mithli wa al-mutaqawwim. There is something that has the like of it. You know, things can be given exactly the same way. As we said, dates, you can bring dates. Apples, you can bring apples. And even in the madhab here, and the ulama in the past, when they say makil wa mawzun, because this is, you can bring the like of it. And they would say if something that is manufactured, it's not mithli, because every time they would make something is different than the one that was made before it, right? But nowadays, like, you know, if someone, for example, say in the past, someone took as a garment or a thobe, he borrowed a thobe as qard. Not that he would return the same one, he can return the like of it, because a thobe, there's no like of it. In the past, used to be, you know, a person, when he saw one, it's difficult to make exactly the same one. So they would not consider it from the mithliyat here, because it's not something weighed or measured, right? But nowadays, this is something that the ulama, contemporary ulama, when they deal with this matter, الصناعة or the manufacturing is very precise. So you can have the same thobe, if it's the same brand, right, and the same size, you cannot differentiate the difference between both. Or cars, you bring two cars, the same color and the same brand and everything, it's exactly with the smallest minute details, right? So the matter of al-mithli becomes wider. So what matters here is it the mithl or no? So if something has a mithl, something has a like of it exactly, then you have to return the like of it. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing that you took, but you return the exact like of it. فإن فقد, if it's lost, then فقيمته يوم فقده. فقيمته, that means the value of it, because it has a value. And the word فإن فقد, because it might get lost, might be finished. Like, for example, the fulus. So this is the example of the fulus. They stopped dealing with this currency. So now it's gone. So how a person would return what he took? فقيمته, its value when يوم فقده. The فقيمته, the value of this is the qima. Remember the qima and the thaman? The thaman is the price and the qima is the value. So فقيمته, then he returns back the qima or the value on the day that it was lost or stopped dealing with it. And this has a difference of opinion in mas'ala here, but we're talking about, it's not, what is the qima? How can a person value the matter when it's gone? It's when they stop dealing with it. So this is how much this was the value of it, then he returns it in gold or silver or another currency and so on. فإن فقد فقيمته يوم فقده. So what is فإن فقد? The thing that has a like, المثلي. فقيمته يوم فقده, right? وقيمة غيرها. وقيمة غيرها, this is another مسألة. The قيمة, the value of other than the mithli, other than the things that has a like. So it's not something that is weighed or measured by volume, or not something very precise. So if it's that, then the qima of it, يوم قبضه, is the qima, is the value when you are returning it, right? Because it's not mithli anyway. It's something that is no like of it. When you borrowed it to start with, you know that you're not going to return the exact like of it, because it's not something that is weighed or measured. So if you want to make it easy for yourself, al-makil wal-mawzun. Only the makil, this is the very primitive mas'ala here, if it's correct to say. Al-makil wal-mawzun is the mithli, is the thing that you can return the like of it, because it's easily, precisely measured. Other than that, it's mutaqawwam, it's all has a value. So when you return what you borrowed that has a value, right, you return the value of it. And when you return it, is the value of it when you're returning it. So this is, and so as you see here, Is it clear? No.
Is that the value when the person returning it?
Right.
The value at the time that he borrowed.
The time when he وقيمة غيرها يوم قبضه, when he returns it. This is the value of it now. The government? Yes, because it's not the same. No. Unless nowadays, again, the government can be exactly equal to one another. So فإن فقد فقيمته يوم فقده وقيمة غيرها يوم قبضه. When he, of course, you meant by, okay, let me make this clear. وقيمة غيرها يوم قبضه. When he returns it with the value of when he took it from the person. But this is the يوم قبضه, that means he returned it when the time when he's returning it. But it's the value when he took it from the person. So this is the value of it then. Clear, inshallah. Then he says, وَيَحْرُمُ كُلُّ شَرْطٍ يَجُرُّ نَفْعًا. This is a very important principle in the Qard. And that is يَحْرُمُ كُلُّ شَرْطٍ يَجُرُّ نَفْعًا. يحرم, which means haram. It's haram to have any condition. كُلُّ شَرْطٍ يَجُرُّ. Al-jar is when something is dragged. So anything that brings naf', to the contract of a loan, this is haram. This is riba. كل قرض جر نفعا فهو ربا. This is the principle in this subject. Every qard, every loan that brings benefit, the benefit doesn't have to be from the same sort of thing that a person gave as a loan. Any benefit. If a person gets a benefit from the loan, then it's riba, then it's not permissible. Of course, the benefit meaning extra than what you would use the money for. I mean, a person taking a loan to benefit, but to return it back with more. This is haram, this is riba. Or can be so many different ways here. A person would say, give me a loan and I will give you my car till I return the loan, you can use it, benefit from it. This is different than ar-rahna, which comes later. To give something collateral, it's different than to give someone to benefit as a result of taking a loan. Or stay in my house for free. Even anything of naf', anything of benefit. And there's so many different examples even in the Sunnah and the Sahaba. Like you have someone, for example, you give him a loan and he's so happy and he's so grateful, so he comes and he gives you a gift. He normally doesn't give you gifts. This is before he gives you the money back. So as an incident from the Sahaba that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah mentioned, that is, that individual would sell the gift, right? And this is part of the loan. Give him another gift, sell the gift. If it's something to be sold, that's part of the loan. So someone asked that he had like 21 dinars or something like this, and he was given gifts from the same person that is equal to 14 dinars. He says you take from him 7 only. So that there's no benefit that comes as a result of the loan. Unless this is their brothers and they're always giving gifts to each other, that's a different situation. And even in some environments or some places where, especially if it's big money, if it's the day when he's going to return the money, the loan, they make a big feast or a meal. The original owner, he invites him for food because he's bringing the money and things like this. So he invites him for food to eat and then he gives him the money. The ulama, they said this is not permissible in that way because he's benefiting from the loan. So when this is, if it's avoided, then it's fine. But to make sure that no benefit whatsoever comes as a result of the qard or the loan. because it becomes riba. ويحرم كل شرط يجر نفعا. So to remember that, even, many details might be different from one place to the other. He says, وإن وفاه أجود أو أهدى إليه هدية بعد وفاء بلا شرط فلا بأس. Which means here, فإن وفاه, if he وفاه, الوفاء is to return, الوفاء is to be faithful, is to return in full. This is basically what, can mean all these things. So for وإن وفاه, so that it refers to the one that took the loan. When he returns it back, وإن وفاه, that means he's returning back the loan. أجود. أجود means better. From al-jud is generosity, but ajwad, something jayyid, something is good. So ajwad, I mean it's better than something else. So he's returning something better. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when he took a loan from someone, a camel, and when he was returning it, they did not find the same exact age. So he told him, give him something better. So, and then he said alayhi salatu wasalam, خيركم أحسنكم قضاءً. The best among you are the one that is best in returning their loans. So that's not riba because it's not in the contract. They did not make it as a condition. He's not expecting it. But when you're returning the loan, you're giving more from your own self. وإن وفاه أجود, whether it's of a better quality or even more. أو أهدى إليه هدية, or he gave him a هدية or a gift. بعد وفاء, after the وفاء. وفاء is what? Fulfilling the return in full. بلا شرط, without a condition. Without a condition, فلا بأس. Without a condition in the contract, then فلا بأس, that means there's no harm if they do this. So you see the difference here. And even they're more into it, even they know, they would mention, if someone is known that he's very nice when he returns the loans of people. So people would be, they can't wait till he takes loans from them. He's known that he's generous when he returns. If he asks someone for a loan, the person knows that he's going to return it with more. This is a dangerous thing. People should not be expecting it, right? So it's no, and it's even there's difference between one place than the other. People that in one place they deal with riba all the time, so you have to be extra careful with how things are. So if in the contract of the loan there's a condition that's going to be benefit increase or so, this is riba, very clear, haram. But it's a good deed for someone without having any condition in the contract or anything like this, that when he returns the loan, he gives a gift or he gives more. It's a good deed from the one that is returning the loan back without having it as a condition, without the other person even expecting it. So if you see that that person is expecting, then a person should stay away from this. يجر نفعا. الجر is when you drag something. جر, يعني either in a physical sense or in a non-physical matter. Something led the person to be in a different state. So this action جره إلى أن يكون كذا. That situation dragged him to act in a different way. So ويحرم كل شرط يجر نفع. The shart brings the benefit. They put a condition there that would bring benefit. So that means it becomes haram. Anything else? طيب, we can start with the next chapter of Al-Rahn. Even though there's so much detail in it, we'll take few sentences, inshallah. He says fasl. So the previous one was in the Qard and some of the rulings of it. Here the rulings or some of the rulings of Al-Rahn. And Al-Rahn, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرِهَانٌ مَقْبُوضَةٌ, as they call it, collateral, something that is being, here it's a aqd, it's a contract between two parties. And basically it's توثقة دين بعين. Al-Qard, as we said, is giving someone something of value and to be returned the like of it or the value of it. Here, الرهن is, they call it عقد توثقة. Al-Qard was irfaq, was something of gentleness, goodness. Al-Rahn is to, التوثقة is when you, what's التوثقة in English? When you want to guarantee, huh? A pledge, no. So this is like a pledge that you're giving something so that your loan is guaranteed that it's going to be returned. So that's why it's توثقة دين بعين. The dain, the loan, you want to make sure that it's guaranteed that it's going to be returned. So you make it fixed with a ayn, with something physically, which is basically to leave something as a collateral. If a person is not able to pay the loan, then there's steps to be taken. You know, and just to go ahead, a little bit of the steps, just to make it clear that if someone gave someone a rahn, and there's conditions for it and how to deal with it and so on. He gave him a zara, collateral, right? And he's supposed to give him back the loan after a year. The year passes and he didn't give the loan. Can he just go sell it and he gets his money? No, it's not like this automatically. He has to first ask him, and he refuses, or he says, no, I don't have anything. Then he has to, either he waits, it's up to him, or if he doesn't have to wait because he has a rahn, then it has to be enforced afterwards as a later stage, you know, with the ruler, with the qadi, with people getting together to make sure that he would not be able to pay whatsoever. But this will be mentioned, inshallah ta'ala. So he says here the first statement, وَكُلُّ مَا جَازَ بَيْعُهُ جَازَ رَهْنُ. Again, like the Qard. وَكُلُّ مَا جَازَ بَيْعُهُ جَازَ رَهْنُ. Everything that is jaza, meaning from al-jawaz, permissible to sell, it's permissible to give it as a rahn or as a collateral. Right? So this is here, it's not just ma yasih, not what is valid. Here ma yajuz, what's permissible. So, you know, having, you know, giving rahn or a collateral that it's something that is not known, or something that is, you know, giving someone a rahn or a collateral that is an animal that is lost. You cannot do that. It's not permissible. And things like this, with some conditions. Anything that is permissible. And the same thing with haram things, you cannot give it as rahn or as a collateral. كل ما جاز بيعه جاز رهن. Anything that is permissible to sell, it's permissible to give as a rahn or as a collateral. وكذا ثمر, كذا means, and also, that means going to be not exception, but things that might be not permissible to sell, you can give it as a rahn. So everything that is permissible to sell, you can give it as a rahn, collateral, except. وكذا ثمر وزرع, the same thing, ثمر is produce, وزرع, plant. لم يبدو صلاحهما. لم يبدو صلاحهما. What's يبدو صلاحهما? They're not ready to be collected or eaten, harvest. So as we said, بدو الصلاح. What was the مسألة of بدو الصلاح when it comes to selling, producing the trees? You only can sell it if it's ripe, right, and have the indication of that it can be used. But here, so you cannot sell it if it's not showing that it can be used. But here in the rahn, you can. When it comes to a collateral, you can give, produce on the trees when it's not ready yet to be used. Because al-rahn is not selling anything. You're just making tawthiqah. You're guaranteeing, you're kind of giving strength to the contract of loan. You're giving it more strength, that person has something that he can refer to if he's not able to pay back. Right? So that's why if it's not ready to be collected, it's okay, because it's not selling. And of course, the difference is very obvious. If you purchase something like this, not budu salah, and it didn't come out, then a person lost. There's nothing to be sold here. But when it comes to the rahn, you know, the loan is there, and if there's no rahn, still the loan is valid. It's not like you're losing the contract of the loan, and you don't have to have a rahn, you don't have to have a collateral for loan. So even if you put something as a rahn that end up being of no value, that person still have to give you back the money, the loan. So the contract is still there, because it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory thing. That's why, you know, the rahn is permissible. But here, it's not a mandatory th it's at ease with what's permissible, what's not permissible to sell. Clear? So that's why the subject of بدو الصلاح. وكذا ثمر وزرع لم يبدو صلاحهما. صلاحهما in the dual tense, meaning the thamar or the zar, the produce or the زرع, which is the plant. The other one وقن دون ولده ونحوه. القن is who? Talked about al-qin is the abd, the slave. دون ولده ونحوه. دون ولده ونحوه. So the qin can be given as a collateral without his son and the like. You know, if someone is selling to sell a slave, you cannot separate the slave from his son, the mother from her son, both together, because you cannot separate them from one another. But if it's a rahn, it's okay. And the rahn means that if the person is not able to pay the money back, they would sell the slave, right? So they're not going to separate them from his offspring. So these are two examples where it's not permissible to sell a slave without his son. But in the rahn, it's okay, because you're not going to separate them from one another. Right? So this is just as an example of exceptions to what's the statement, كل ما جاز بيع جاز رهن. So, and there might be things that comes as a result of these types of exceptions. So, again, the original ruling is كل ما جاز بيع جاز رهن. Everything that is permissible to sell, it's permissible to give as a رهن. I will take the last one, inshallah. He says, ويلزم في حق راهن بقبض. ويلزم في حق راهن بقبض. يلزم, the word يلزم from اللازم means it becomes binding, I guess, to say that. We'll talk about it. في حق راهن, for the right of the راهن. Who's the راهن? We have the راهن is the collateral, right? الراهن is the owner of it, the owner of الرهن. So if someone gives his car as a collateral for the loan that he has. So who's the owner of the car? Who's the one that is giving the rahan? This is al-rahin, the borrower. He's the owner. Let's keep it. Al-rahin is the owner of the collateral. Al-murtahin is the one that, the other side, the one that would receive it, the one that you will give the collateral to. Right? So this is the murtahin. So here, وَيَلْزَمُ فِي حَقِّ رَاهِن. The rahin, the one that gives the collateral, the contract becomes binding on him بِقَبْض, if the murtahin takes it. Before that, he can cancel the deal. But once he gives it and the other person have the qabd, and we talked about al-qabd can be many different things. So if it's a car, for example, he says, the car is in this parking lot, take the key, that's it. So he cannot go back unless the other person agrees. That's what يلزم means. اللزوم here, when عقد لازم, that means what? That means you cannot break it. You don't have the khiyar, you don't have the right to break it. Right? If it's jaiz, that means what? You can break it anytime you want. But lazim, you would require the agreement between both. You get it? So when does the rahn becomes lazim? If the murtahin, if the other side, he takes the rahn, becomes in his possession, so then it becomes binding in who? In the rahin. Not the murtahin. The murtahin, the one that he gave the money to the first one, and you give him as a result of that the collateral, it's not lazim, he can give it back to you. Doesn't have to have it. It's tawthiqa for him. It's a way for him to make sure that he gets his money back. Right? So that's why it's not lazim for him. It's not binding on him that he does not have. He can return it. He can say, no, I don't want anything to guarantee my money. It's okay. You can keep your car. That's what it means by lazim. It's not lazim on him. But for the rahin is lazim. You understand? Because the rahin is the one that is given this because he needs that for the other person to trust him with the money or whatever. So it becomes لازم on the راهن, not لازم on the مرتهن. Is it clear or is it different? بقبض المرتهن. So here بقبض المرتهن. What would you say in English? الراهن is the what? There's no title for him? The creditor? And the مرتهن? The debtor? But it's not a debt, you know. As you know, the rahan is not a debt. صراحة. There's ruling so. But then يعني anyway.
But it's as a result of it happens as a result of this.
Right. But it's not a loan. It's a result of a loan, but it's not a loan. That's why as we see the rulings of it, you know, if someone give you something as a collateral, can you use it? No, you can't. Unless in very specific situations you can use. Because, and also, if it's a qard and you use it, that's qard brought benefit. So it becomes riba. Right? So except in some situations. Mortgager? Mortgagee. So mortgage can be used for rahan. So maybe one of the things to be done is to get someone with the law to get these words, inshallah. Pledger and pledgee. Okay, mashallah. So there's always two sides of any contract. So it's important to know the name of both sides. Right. Right. So the pledger and the pledgee, mashallah. We'll stop here, inshallah. And subhanAllah, that's why the language is very important, and you cannot be of someone of knowledge unless you have to know the Arabic language. You would always rely on other things. So that's why it's, you know, if one of the benefits that we get from this is a person would say, oh, I have to study. That's it. I'm gonna stop everything and study the language so that I'm you know, continue. MashaAllah, this is a good thing. So it has to be done. As you see here, every word has meanings and every word has its implications and things like this. And it's a beautiful thing. It becomes an enjoyable thing in one's life when a person constantly learns the language, inshallah. طيب, hadith, inshallah. Did you guys took the long hadith yet? He took the long one. We'll just read 140 again, inshallah. عن أبي مالك الأشعري رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الطهور شطر الإيمان والحمد لله تملأ الميزان وسبحان الله والحمد لله تملأان أو تملأ ما بين السماوات والأرض والصلاة نور والصدقة برهان والصبر ضياء والقرآن حجة لك أو عليك كل الناس يغدو فبائع نفسه فمعتقها أو موبقها رواه مسلم. What's the difference between الطهور and الطهور? Here is الطهور with a ضم. What's الطهور with a فتحة? They're both beautiful. Yeah, we did. I'm just repeating it again because the hadith is long, so you know. الطهور is the act of purification. الطهور with a fatha is what we use for purification. So if someone is using the water for purification, this is called الطهور. The same thing as al-wudu versus al-wudu. Al-wudu is we all say wudu, right? So this is the act of wudu. Al-wudu with a fatha, that's the water used for wudu. So bring al-wudu for me. That means bring the water of wudu for me. Bring al-wudu. Bring al-tahur. Bring the water, right? So that I make tuhur. Yeah. So al-hadith is not al-tahur, is al-tuhur.